Hello everyone, welcome to yet another current affairs session by SRIRAM'S IAS. We are into our second session today. We finished our first session yesterday. Do let us know in the comments how you're liking the session, whether you want the speed to be altered or the contents to be dealt with in a different manner. Do let us know your feedback in the comments below. With this, let's start our session for today by analyzing the important articles that feature in The Hindu newspaper. So today's articles are on our screen. These are the important articles featuring into the Hindu Delhi edition of The Hindu newspaper dated 2nd of June. With this, let's dive right into our first article. What does the first article say? It talks about a case for community-oriented health services. What is the context that we are looking for in this article? The World Health Organization has recognized the country's 1 million or 10 lakh Asha workers. What are Asha workers? Accredited social health activists as the global health leaders for their efforts in connecting the community to the government's health programs and especially their work during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the recognition given to them, and on this context, the author has chosen this issue to highlight the work done by Asha workers in the past so many years and the issues that plague them and how we can get rid of their issues and make their position better. With this, let's ask ourselves, who are Asha workers? When we say accredited social health activists, what are they? So Asha workers are primarily females who are married or widowed or divorced and preferably between the ages of 25 and 45. So the Asha workers are females working in the rural setup first of all, and they are volunteers from within the community who are trained to provide information and aid people in accessing benefits of various healthcare schemes of the government. So the Asha workers were chosen as the bridge between the community and the programs of health benefits of the government, so that these females who belong to the community itself could come and sort of bridge the gap between the health beneficiaries and the health programs. Now, the role of these community health workers under the National Rural Health Mission was first established in 2005. So they get their recognition via the National Rural Health Mission Act, where there were in 2005 where they were first recognized, and they act as, like I said, a bridge connecting the marginalized communities with facilities such as primary health centers, sub-centers and district hospitals. So they become a connecting link between the services and the beneficiaries. Now, what are the roles and responsibilities of the Asha health workers? So, being the first functionary of the medical health facilities of the government, they carry a host of roles and responsibilities with them, which are creating awareness about all the programs that the government is running, counseling of women whenever there are women who require counseling with respect to pregnancy, birth preparedness, safe deliveries, importance, breastfeeding, contraception, immunization, child care and prevention of reproductive tract infection or sexually transmitted infections. So with respect to all kinds of diseases, all kinds of programs, pregnancy related programs, they do the counseling of women. Then they facilitate the access of health services. So whatever the health services are being propagated by the government, they are responsible for facilitating the access of that services to these needy people. Then is developing a comprehensive health plan. They help in developing a comprehensive health plan with the policymakers high above in the rung, and they are consulted because they work on the ground looking at all the problems and interacting with all the people of the community. Then they also provide primary medical care for minor disorders like fever, diarrhea and minor injuries. Under revised National Tuberculosis Control Program, these Asha health workers have been very instrumental in eradicating diseases such as tuberculosis, malaria, and host of other programs. And they also arrange the escort for pregnant women and children. Whenever the pregnant women have want any facility to be transported to the hospital, they come into the rescue and they arrange the escort facilities. Then they also keep the sub-center or primary health center informed about births and deaths in her village and any diseases, outbreaks or unusual health concerns in the community. So this means that Asha workers also work as the record keepers for all facilities, and this is where they have for any kind of pregnancy as well as for diseases, and this is where during the COVID time they have been utmost instrumental in dealing with the pandemic in the rural areas. So with these host of responsibilities with them, which they have practiced very rightly, the author points out as to how the Asha worker program has been a very successful program, where not just the pandemic, they have been instrumental in applying or facilitating centers' health services very efficiently into the rural program. With this, then the author moves on to dealing with the problems of the Asha workers. Before the problems, let's take up the benefits and success as we've talked about. So, the idea of having activist in the name was to designate them as the first functionary in the community and not the lowest rung of health system. We've mentioned this, that the word activist signifies that they are not at the lowest rung of the health system, but they are the first functionary or the connecting functionary between the marginalized communities, the needy beneficiaries and the facilities provided by the government. Them being from the same village ensures better familiarity and community connect. And public health experts have unusual consensus that Asha workers have become pivotal to nearly every health initiative that the community level are integral to demand-side interventions for health services in India. We saw this as the benefit. This established their pivotal importance in the healthcare system of India, where in order to envisage better healthcare in India, we take a community-oriented approach, and with this community healthcare-oriented approach, Asha workers come at the forefront and become the pivotal part of it. Now the author talks about, with the certain success that Asha workers have shown, there are also certain challenges that plague the Asha workers. That is why we also see a lot of protests being indulged by the Asha workers. Now what are these challenges? The author points out that the challenges as they are, one of it is that they get their payment as per performance-based incentives and not fixed salary. So initially this was kept to keep the Asha workers out of the traditional setup of salaried employees and make them more accountable for the work they do, where this was a nice thought, but in reality what has happened, that what becomes of this payment as per their performance, the payment becomes very low, and in the absence of any fixed salary, they are not able to earn adequate income. So that becomes a challenge for them, where the Asha workers are standing at such an important position in the healthcare system and essaying such a huge role, they still face problems of salaries. The second challenge they have is that they do not have opportunity for career progression. With the position where they stand, they do not have much opportunities to increase their position from, let's say, an Asha worker to a public health nurse or so on. So they lack the opportunities for career progression as well. The third challenge they face is lack of job security and no social benefits. Despite being pivotal to provide health benefits to all kinds of needy beneficiaries, they themselves do not enjoy job security and do not enjoy any kind of social benefits. So plaguing these challenges, where the Asha workers have been so pivotal in the public healthcare system, the author suggests certain solutions to these problems. Now what are these solutions? According to the author, the way forward is where, like like the timing of the article, we also use this timing where they have been conferred by the highest health award by WHO, that we use this opportunity to review their system. Whatever problems are plaguing, we review their problems and find a solution for them. So one way forward that the author suggests is that states need to develop mechanisms for higher pay. What we were talking about, that the payment is inadequate and only performance based, now it can be time to link the performance based pay to also a certain grade of fixed salary. Then author suggests that mechanisms should be built for career progression and capacity building. As we saw that this was a challenge, so in order to bridge this challenge, we need to make career progression possible for ASHA workers and also make capacity building programs where they, if they want to increase their strengths, increase their skill sets, they are free and able to do so. The next solution the author suggests is extending the benefits of social sector services, including health insurance for the workers as well as their families, which should be considered. Where we are talking about that they do not have social benefits, these social sector services benefits should be extended to them and their families. And then lastly, the author suggests that making their post permanent to grant security can also be considered. Where they are not permanent workers, granting their posts permanency can help them going a long way. So these are some of the solutions which the authors suggest in order to uplift the position of ASHA workers, where they have been tirelessly working to transform the health system in India and make it community oriented and make all the health facilities reach to the marginalized and needy communities who need the health facilities the most. So with this, let's move on to our second article for the day. The second article which appears in the newspaper is Center Notifies Appointment of 8 New High Court Judges. Now this particular article falls for the syllabus of GS2. It becomes relevant for us from the point of view of GS2, where judiciary becomes a part of polity section. Now, as per the news is not important for us very much, where it talks about many judges being appointed to the High Court, many judges being transferred. The article talks about the judges being transferred or new judges being appointed. What becomes important for us to look at from this article from UPSC point of view is the procedure of appointment of judges. The procedure of appointment of High Court judges becomes important for us to look at over here. So let's look at that. How do the judges of High Court and Supreme Court, in this case we'll talk about the High Court, get appointed? So this particular task is a joint task wherein the vacancies in the higher judiciary is a continuous, integrated and collaborative process between the executive and the judiciary. How is the appointment of judges a collaborative process between the executive and judiciary? We'll see that. It requires consultation and approval from the constitutional authorities at the state as well as the central level. So for executive, both for the state and central level, the consultation and approval is required. Now we'll look at how the High Court judges are appointed. So Article 217 of the Constitution states that the judge of a High Court shall be appointed by the President in consultation with the Chief Justice of India, the CJI, the governor of that particular state. So in order to appoint this Chief Justice of the High Court of a particular state, President will be the authority who would be appointed in consultation, which means that these dignitaries will be consulted for the appointment, which are the Chief Justice of India and the governor of that particular state. And when it comes to appointing judges of the High Court other than the Chief Justice of the High Court, then the Chief Justice of that particular High Court is also consulted. Now when we mean by consultation, that is where the concept of collegium comes up. What is the process of consultation? The consultation process is where High Court judges are recommended by a collegium comprising the CGI and 2 senior most judges. So a collegium is a group of judges where the CGI is heading that group along with 2 senior most judges, and they come together and they decide what the list of names of judges who can be appointed for the High Court or Supreme Court. The proposal, however, is initiated by the Chief Justice of the High Court concerned in consultation with 2 senior most colleagues. So for that particular High Court, the proposal would be initiated by the Chief Justice of that High Court along with 2 senior most colleagues. That proposal will go to the collegium comprising of CGI and 2 senior most judges, and that collegium will finalize the names whoever judges are to be appointed for the High Court. And then the recommendation is sent to the Chief Minister, who advises the Governor to send the proposal to the Union Law Minister. Now once the collegium has made up a list, this proposal goes to the Chief Minister, who advises. We remember, Governor acts on the aid and advice of the Chief Minister or the Council of Minister of States. So therefore, Governor then sends the proposal to the Union Law Minister. And now the Union Law Minister then is notifying the appointment of these High Court judges. The Chief Justice of the High Court is appointed as per the policy of having Chief Justices from outside the respective states. So generally, the Chief Justices of High Courts we find are generally belonging to outside of the states, right? And this we saw, collegium takes the call on the elevation, whether or not they should be elevated to the position of judge or not. This is the procedure by which the judges are appointed. Right? We saw the process as to how the judges of the High Court are appointed. Right? With this, let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article, which features in the newspaper, talks about Center to hold sessions on gig workers' rights. Now, what are gig workers? What do we mean by gig workers? This article talks about the problems and challenges that are faced by the gig workers working in what is known as the gig economy. What we look at, the Zomato or Swiggy riders, all the other food delivery riders or freelancers, all of these workers or all of these type of jobs which we see today, which have come up in the new age, are known as gig workers. Let's look at this. Before that, what part of the syllabus will this article fall into? It will either fall into GS3 of the section of Indian economy where we talk about employment, and it will also form a part of GS2 where issues relating to development of human resources are concerned. So it's an issue which can be taken up from depending upon the aspect which we see of this particular issue. It can be dealt with in different syllabus heads. Now let's dive deep into what is gig economy, what are the gig workers' problems and they are facing, and what is this article talking about doing. What is the gig economy? The gig economy is a free market system in which temporary positions are common and organizations contract with independent workers for short-term engagements. So as we can see with this, the jobs that are performed as gig workers are temporary and they are contracted with the organizations with independent workers for short-term engagements. So they are temporary as well as short-term. According to a report by Boston Consulting Group, India's gig workforce comprises 15 million workers employed across industries such as software, shared services and professional services. So as we now understand, gig workers do not just mean the delivery riders. It also means all the freelancers working in these sectors as well. All of these workers form a part of the 15 million strong gig workers force which exists in India. And according to a 2019 report by India Staffing Federation, India is the 5th largest flexi staffing. What do we mean by when we say flexi staffing? Where the worker staff is flexible. Like we saw, temporary and short-term engagement. After US, China, Brazil and Japan, India stands at the 5th position for largest flexi staffing, where India is indulging into flexible staffing for its offices. This is some information with regards to gig economy. Now, what is the potential of the gig sector, where we are talking about why is the government coming together to discuss on gig economy? Because an estimated 56% of the new employment in India is being generated by the gig economy companies across both blue collar and white collared workforce. What is a blue collared workforce? That workforce which does not have salaried job, and they work on hourly basis or daily basis. And white collar jobs or workforce are those which are salaried workforce. So the gig economy is covered in both workforce. While the gig economy is prevalent among the blue collar jobs in India, the demand for gig workers in white collar jobs such as project specific consultants, salespeople, web designers, content writers and software developers is also emerging. So the demand for gig economy is also emerging in the white collar job sector. The gig economy can serve up to 90 million jobs in the non-farm sectors in India, with a potential to add 1.25% to the GDP over the long term. So this is the potential that the gig economy and the strength of gig workers are holding right now and in the long term future in India. Keeping this in mind, the government, the union ministry is coming together in a session, in a brainstorming session, to discuss about these problems of gig workers, the new age issues which are plaguing the gig workers, and what can be done for them. So therefore, they will now in this session that would be arranged by the union ministry, there would be participating a lot of organizations, trade unions which represent these gig workers, so that a healthy discussion on their problems take place. So let's try to look at what are the problems that these gig workers face and what kind of solutions are sought to be come out of this discussion that the union ministry is going to indulge into. When we talk about the problems of gig workers, the problems that the article also highlights and generally are also known are that the traditional employer-employee relationship in the gig economy is not recognized, which means that the traditional relationship which used to be there, where the employer used to sort of keep the employee on a salaried basis, that is not happening. So the traditional relationship does not exist, which is why there is a lack of proper wages for the gig worker, the income is insufficient, and social security is absent. They do not have any social security benefits such as provident fund or insurance. Then there are long working hours, right? All of these gig workers have to work for long hours, and there are uncertain working conditions. All these delivery riders face hostile working conditions. They have to work for long hours, and they are also prone to a lot of accidents while they are riding. Then another problem which they face is that there is no comprehensive database that exists for how many workers there actually are. Can they register somewhere for if at all after that they avail any social benefit after that registration. So that is not yet happened because there is no comprehensive database for them. And then there is a big digital divide between men and women as well, which poses a significant hurdle to women's participation in the gig work. Now we all know that the gig economy primarily runs on the knowledge of technology, and the knowledge of technology is disproportionate between the men and women, which is the digital divide. As per the GSMA Mobile Gender Gap Report 2020, only 21% of the women in India are mobile internet users. So this also is a problem where not many women are able to be tech savvy and are not internet users. So that is why the gig economy faces a dearth of women workers. Now what is this particular meet going to do for these problems? So they will be taking up the discussions on these issues, what they can do, what are the best practices they can come up with. For example, what can be the mechanism fixed for their proper wages. For example, the recent code on wages which the Labour Ministry is going to put out has a provision for the gig workers having a fixed salary. So that is something which they will talk about. Then for a database, they will try or they will talk about registering the workers on eShram portal. This is a portal which was recently started by the government after the migrant crisis, so that the unorganized workers register themselves on this portal so that they become entitled to avail any kind of benefits, right? Then another solution which which is purported to be discussed is levying of 2% fee on every ride, which will go to their accidental insurance for these gig workers. This is something which is happening in Thailand and Malaysia, and these best practices will be taken up by the government, where 2% of every ride's fee would be going towards accidental insurance and covering the social benefit part for the gig workers. These would be some of the things that would be discussed, and as and when they come or feature in the newspaper, we'll discuss them in detail more. So this was a discussion on the gig economy workers as to what potential they hold, at the same time what problems they plague, and what the upcoming meet between the ministry and various stakeholders is purporting to do. Right? With this, let's move on to our next article. The next article that we have talks about May manufacturing PMI hints at sustained rebound in sector. Now what do we mean by PMI? PMI, or the Purchasers Manufacturing Index, is a survey this article talks about the manufacturing sector, and the index that is important for us to study in this article is the PMI, or the Purchasing Manufacturing Index. Let's look at some important points from this index. Before that, this particular article forms important for us from the Indian economy section from GS3. Let's look at some important points for the PMI index. The PMI is a survey-based measure, which means that this index is a survey going to different people of the industry, businessmen, taking a survey, asking them questions. So it's a survey-based measure that asks the respondents about changes in their perception about key business variables as compared with the previous month. So it's a month-by-month index where each month the surveyors go to the respondents, who are generally the businessmen who are the working in that particular manufacturing industry, and they are asked key questions about the perception about the business variables, as to what kind of business is coming, whether or not they are having a profit, these kind of questions. Then the purpose of the PMI is to provide information about current and future business conditions to company decision makers, analysts and investors. So the information gathered from these people would be a useful information for current and future business conditions. For all kinds of decisions to be made, this survey will be very helpful. It is calculated separately for the manufacturing and services sectors, and then a composite index is also constructed. So if PMI is for manufacturing, a separate index for services is also constructed, and then a composite index is made by mixing both these sectors. And essentially, the PMI is a number from 0 to 10. So we can say that the PMI for the month of May or the month of April has been 54, which the article says. If the number is above 50, it means that expansion is happening, which means that manufacturing activity is on the rise, while a score below that denotes contraction and a reading at 50 indicates no change. So the article mentions a PMI score of 55, which means that there has been an increase in manufacturing activity from the previous month. If the PMI of the previous month is higher than the PMI of the current month, it represents that the economy is contracting, which is not the case in this particular article. It is usually released at the start of every month. It is therefore considered a good leading indicator of economic activity. So generally, when it is released at the start of the month, not all kinds of information available, therefore only the availability of PMI becomes very important, because as the official data on the industrial output, manufacturing and GDP growth comes much later, PMI helps to make informed decisions at an earlier stage. So this becomes the use for PMI, which is why it becomes important from the perspective of UPSC as an indicator of measuring the manufacturing activity in the economy, right? So this becomes the important points that we needed to look at from this particular article. With this, let's move on to our next article. The next article which appears in the newspaper talks about GST collections jumping to 44% to almost 1.41 lakh crore in May. Now in this particular article, what is important for us to know in this, the figure that is collected is something which is important for us to know, and the fact that in 2022 May, there has been a 44% jump. So the question can come in prelims where they ask the collections of GST has been increasing. So in this aspect, the data becomes useful, and then there are also comparative measures where apart from GST, what other kind of taxes are collected, and which is the highest tax that the government collects. So based on these two parameters, this data becomes important for us to see, and that is the only important thing which we need to take a note from this particular article. The other fact is that this is only the fourth consecutive time that the collections of GST have exceeded 1.4 lakh crore, which has been May and the other 3 preceding months, right? This is the important information limited which we need to take from this particular article. This forms a part of GS3 syllabus of government budgeting. With this, we move on to our final article of the day, which is government allows cooperatives to sell products online. Now, why is this article important? Because it talks about the government e-marketplace or GEM portal. The GEM portal becomes important for us from the UPSC's point of view, because this is a platform created by the government in 2016 for procurement of all kinds of goods and services by governments, state governments, local governments, public sector undertakings, and all the other government bodies or semi-government bodies. For all the procurements, they created an e-marketplace, an electronic marketplace known as the government e-marketplace or GEM portal. Now let's look at some of the facts of GEM portal. This article talks about the fact that now cooperatives would also be allowed to sell their products on GEM portal, and government and other government bodies would be able to buy these products from the cooperatives on this portal. This move is supposed to benefit 27 crore people associated with 8.5 lakh cooperatives. So this move is supposed to benefit these 8.5 lakh cooperatives which exist, which would be able to sell their products on the GEM portal. Let's look at some of the important points about the GEM portal. The GEM is a one-stop national public procurement portal to facilitate online procurement of common use goods and services required by various central and state government departments, organizations, public sector undertakings, and etc. The procurement of the goods and services by ministries and central public sector enterprises is mandatory for goods and services available on GEM. So which means that the procurement or the buying of the products is done only by the government. But who all can sell on this particular portal? As we saw, cooperatives are the new members. Apart from them, all the MSME industries, private companies, all of them can sell their products on the GEM portal but cannot buy the products. For the buying, it is only the prerogative of the government agencies. It also provides the tools of e-bidding and reverse e-auction to facilitate the government users achieve the best value for their money. At present, the GEM has more than 30 lakh products, over rupees 10 lakh crore worth of transactions have happened so far at the portal, and the major transactions done or the major products sold on this portal belong to the MSME industries. It was launched in 2016 to bring transparency and efficiency in the government buying process, and the ministry which takes care of this portal is the Ministry of Commerce and Industries. Right? This was our discussion for today, where we took up the important articles in the newspaper and tried to break them down and look for us what is important from the perspective of UPSC. We'll meet tomorrow with another important articles of tomorrow's edition of the Hindu newspaper. Thank you.